You elect a prime minister, but he doesn't get to control the country's nuclear weapons. He doesn't get to decide war or peace. None of this is in the hands of the elected leader. In Pakistan, real power does not lie in the hands of the civilians or the elected civilian government. It sits squarely with the generals in Rawalpindi and in the shadowy corridors of the inter-services intelligence. This is the story of how the Pakistani deep state has kept its grip on power. They've used a combination of what they call the 3 A's: Allah, Army, and America. And through war, peace, religion, terror, they have kept their hold on power for the last 75 years. This is the story of what the deep state of Pakistan really is, and why this deep state matters now more than ever before after the recent Pahalgam terror attack. Since it got independence in 1947, Pakistan has spent nearly half of its existence under direct military rule. Only half of the other time has been under civilian governments. It started 10 years after independence. In 1958, General Ayub Khan staged the very first military coup in Pakistan. After General Ayub came General Yahya Khan a few years later. And then in 1977, General Zia-ul Haq took the reins of power, turning Pakistan into an Islamic state and aligning with the United States in what was then considered the Afghan Jihad in Afghanistan. In 1999, General Pervez Musharraf ousted Nawaz Sharif, who was an elected prime minister, and General Musharraf went on to become one of the longest-serving army generals who then became president. Each time the generals took the reins of power, they claimed to the Pakistani people that it was to save the nation. But each time that happened, it was democracy and the Pakistani civilians who suffered. The ISI, the Inter-Services Intelligence, was born as a military intelligence agency. But over time, it became Pakistan's most powerful institution. It orchestrated the Mujahideen war in Afghanistan in the late 1970s and early 1980s. And to help the ISI was the American External Intelligence Agency, the CIA. Together, they were able to chase out the mighty Soviet army out of Afghanistan. The Pakistan ISI carefully created and cultivated the Mujahideen, or the freedom fighters, who later went on to become the Taliban in Afghanistan, and they went on to rule Afghanistan. 20 years later, after the Soviets were kicked out of Afghanistan, they used the same model, but they turned the model upside down. This time, the ISI ended up funding and training jihadi groups like the Lashkar-e-Taiba and the Jaish-e-Mohammed to wage a proxy war in Kashmir. It also gave sanctuary to the world's most dreaded man, Osama bin Laden, who was hiding in Abbottabad, not very far away from the Pakistan Military Academy. This was cheap warfare. There was no direct accountability on the Pakistan Armed Forces or even on the ISI for that matter, and it gave the army a permanent reason to stay relevant. When civilian leaders get too independent, too much out of their way, then the military pushes back. Nawaz Sharif tried to rein in the army. He was ousted, he was exiled and jailed not once but 2 times, first in 1999 and then in 2017. Imran Khan was seen as the military's puppet when he was first elected in 2018. He then turned on the army, but the generals did not brook Imran's rebellion for too long. And then in 2022 came Imran's infamous removal from the Prime Minister's office. He had multiple legal cases against him. He now serves multi-year jail terms. Imran openly threatened the writ of the army with an open challenge on the leadership of General Asim Munir. The May 9th violence that we saw a few years ago was the very first time in Pakistan's 75-year history when the houses of brigadiers and generals were targeted by ordinary party workers of Imran Khan's PTI. After Imran, the army replaced him with Shahbaz Sharif, who governs with one eye firmly on GHQ in Rawalpindi. Shahbaz is seen as one of the weakest prime ministers that Pakistan's ever had. Foreign policy, India strategy, nuclear doctrine, none of this is decided in the Pakistani parliament or even in the Pakistani Prime Minister's office. The Pakistani military is not just a war machine, it is a business empire. From cereals to cement, banks to housing colonies, the military owns all of these businesses. War and instability simply justify massive defense budgets that the Pakistan Army gets every year. In fact, the Pakistan Army's latest defense budget in the year 2024-25 was a little over 2 trillion Pakistani rupees. That is roughly about $7.5 billion US dollars. For a country that is broke, this is almost criminal. The $7.5 billion army budget is comparable to the largest bailout that Pakistan has received from the International Monetary Fund. That bailout was also to the tune of $7.5 billion. A country that is broke is borrowing money and gives that exact same amount of money for its defense forces. It is this money flow that the Pakistani deep state is seeking to protect. Peace, on the other hand, threatens that cash flow. The logic is cruel, but it's very simple. As long as there is a threat from India, the Pakistani army remains untouchable and it remains profitable. The Pahalgam attack is not just a one-off. It fits a very, very definitive pattern. Every time there is stability in Kashmir, tourism goes up, elections happen, then a terror strike also happens, which singularly the aim of which is to try and derail the fragile peace. This time it was tourists who were the target. Never before in recent memory has that happened in Kashmir, where terrorists targeted tourists, because it's the very heartbeat of the local economy in Kashmir. The locals, of course, blame Pakistan. There were candlelight marches, vigils, etc. that came out in the immediate aftermath of Pahalgam. And while Islamabad has been issuing routine denials, saying that it has no role in what happened in Pahalgam, but look at what the international statements are that are emanating from both Islamabad as well as from Beijing. China and Pakistan have been echoing the same call. They've been using the exact same wordings, that they want an impartial probe. India had offered an impartial probe after Pathankot and nothing came of it. So the question then that needs to be asked is, who exactly is it that benefits from this renewed tension between India and Pakistan? The answer once again points not to Islamabad but to Rawalpindi. It also comes at a time when the Pakistani army was facing unprecedented pressure. The Jafar Express attack that happened in Balochistan back in March was a direct challenge to the writ of the Pakistan army. The forced exodus of more than 1 million Afghan refugees from Pakistan back across the Durand Line had led to open tensions between the Pakistani state, in particular the Pakistan army, and the Taliban. And to top all of this, Indian Kashmir was showing great progress. Hence, Asim Munir made those comments, rather provocative comments, calling Kashmir Pakistan's jugular vein. To understand the India-Pakistan conflict, one must stop watching Islamabad. Watch Rawalpindi instead. Watch the generals, watch the ISI, and watch the men who never have to face elections, but they really control the fate of 240 million people. In Pakistan, the war machine feeds itself. There is only one thing that threatens any war machine, and that is peace. A credible and lasting peace. That is exactly what the deep state of Pakistan does not want.